start. Hello everyone, salam, namaste, adab, and welcome to today's show, today's event. And today we are going to talk on Indian Muslims present and future. The speaker is Mr. Najeeb Jung, a former Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, former Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia, a retired IAS officer, a researcher, author, and public intellectual. The format of today's session is somewhat different. It is going to be a sort of in-conversation with Dr. Hilal Ahmed, who is an associate professor at the Center of the Study of Developing Society, CSDS, Delhi. Dr. Hilal Ahmed is quite known as specializing in political Islam, Indian democracy. He is the author of multiple books. He's a columnist. His columns are appearing almost everywhere in the national newspaper. As you know, Najeeb Jung Saab is a very senior bureaucrat. So he is almost on the board member on at least 24 societies and institutions in the country. And he is well known for his role as a Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and as a Vice Chancellor of Jamia Islamia. And so more than that is really not required to know. Rather, we should know what he's going to tell us and how Hilal is going to talk to him on various issues facing the Indian Muslims, their present and what is going to be in their future. So welcome you all, and now I give it to Hilal, Dr. Hilal Ahmed. So please.
Adab, thank you very much. It is indeed an honor to have a conversation with Najeeb Saab. And the question which I am going to ask, obviously you all are here to listen to him, not to me. So these are basically the questions that actually stem from my own research. These are my questions. So the format is that I will ask a few questions which are a bit unconventional, because usually we ask, whenever we talk about Muslim, there are certain set questions. So I decided to change the format and try to ask a very different set of questions, which are obviously related to the questions which we all have. Having said that, broadly speaking, I'm going to ask three set of questions. These are cultural, economic, and political. And why I am dividing these questions into this is because Najeeb Saab, because we know things that because he's a person who has got different sort of personalities. He's a researcher and he's an administrator as well. So I think the best way to start the conversation would be to raise the question of economic marginalization of Muslims. I'm saying this because, whenever we talk of Muslims in India, we are talking about 20 or more than 20 crores people, second largest majority in the country. They are highly divided. They are divided on caste, class lines. They speak different languages, and in a way, they practice different sort of Islam. So on the one hand, we have got this multiplicity of Islamic identities. And on the other hand, they are a religious minority, recognized religious minority by the constitution. And at the same time, they are one of the most deprived economic community in the country. So therefore, I would like to start asking you, sir, the first question is about economic liberalization, because you have witnessed that very closely, especially after 1991. I'm not saying that everything was perfect before 1991, but economic liberalization was an important point of departure that took place in the early 90s. Because usually when we talk about Muslim, we refer to early 90s to Babri Masjid, but in my view, I think economic liberalization is an equally important issue. The question is, and this question is not entirely my question, if you go back to such a commission report, you find that there is a chapter in such a commission report which is called perception, the second chapter of the report, where the people who wrote the report went to Muslim communities and asked different set of people, and most of the people raised this question that after liberalization, we have faced a tremendous amount of marginalization and lack of opportunities. Now we know that this has happened in last 30 years and things have completely changed now. We are in the third or fourth process of reform. What do you think that economic liberalization, what kind of impact it had or it has been having on Muslim communities?
Razi Saab, thank you for having me on your show. Thank you very much. And Hilal, it's a pleasure talking to you. You are so well known for writing. I've seen your book, and I am a fan of your pieces in newspapers.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you for taking time out. The question you asked me is fairly complex, because to my mind, the economic marginalization of Muslims does not just start from 1991. I think the economic marginalization starts well before, immediately after partition. The community really took a beating post-partition because it suffered from an enormous complex. Because people in India believed that partition has taken place because of Muslims. And there was a huge backlash. I think particularly in northern India, because South India, of course, did not have that kind of a backlash. The South Indians did not migrate to Pakistan. And the demand of Pakistan also was not so much from there, but from our side of the country, which is Uttar Pradesh and the Punjab. We faced a huge backlash. I belong to Delhi, and I have seen that in the 50s and 60s. So the marginalization, to put 1991 as a crossroads, to my mind, may not be adequate. However, having said that, the country as a whole took a very interesting turn in 1991 with liberalization. And I really believe that people in India, the middle classes, the upper middle classes did so well. They prospered. We got new cars and we got homes and we got flats and buildings. And of course, the exclusive club of the billionaires grew more and more. But as a class, this did not, unfortunately, impact Muslims. Now, are we to blame government, or are we to blame the political polity, or are we to blame ourselves? Because one thing must be clear, is that this community has been heavily, poorly educated, right from partition. Now, you have a combination of poor education combined with a lack of complete political leadership. The Muslims have been devoid of leadership. If you look at maybe the early 50s, and you had Maulana Azad alive, and you had Dr. Sayyid Mahmood there, and you had Hafiz Ibrahim there. But as the times and as the decades passed, Muslims have had virtually no leadership, political leadership. I can remember that till early 70s, we had Dr. Faridi in Lucknow. But subsequent to that, I don't see anyone emerging as a true leader who can tell the community what is right and what is wrong. Now, who becomes the leader of the community? The leader of a community in our country, as we see, and this is very, very evident, and it is across all communities now, with politics becoming so expensive and fighting an election becoming so difficult, that it is what we call bahubalis that get elected. So if I ask Hilal to fight an election, then Hilal would end up selling his grandfather's properties, his father's properties, his wife's wares, and everything to be able to just fight an election. So it's not possible.
True.
So what has happened is that economic marginalization comes from lack of education, comes from lack of political leadership, and of course, uh, the very idea that politics in India has become, as you have said, heavily caste-based. So how do you get elected? The marginalization of Muslims in politics, in parliament today, in the assemblies today, is so evident that a party which has 240 MPs in parliament and is the ruling party does not have a single representation of a Muslim. There is no Muslim in the entire cabinet of the Union of India. This would shock anybody listening to this, but it is true. And as we say, Urdu mein ke kaan pe jhu nahi rengti. So your and my participation in this conversation makes no difference to this government because they have ensured that there is political marginalization, there is economic marginalization, there is educational marginalization. So it's a community that is under a huge block. It's a pressure, and fortunately or unfortunately, I moved away from your question of liberalization. I've taken the whole canvas. But that is the picture that we have today of a community under enormous pressure, bereft of leadership, bereft of money, bereft of education. So where does it leave them? That's the question that I will leave for you.
Sir, actually, you moved very quickly to my last section. But I will try to go back to the second question, which is actually more on economic term. In post 2014 India, we got a very new kind of state emerging. And I'm not talking about, at least in economic sense, it is not entirely new because liberalization has already started. Why I'm saying liberalization important? Because that was the time when Sachar was constituted. That issue came up time and again. And that's why I thought that, obviously we have to take into consideration the post-colonial period very seriously. But as a watershed moment, I think liberalization played an important role, which I agree completely with you. Now, the question is, in post-2014 India, we have got a very different sort of state emerging, especially in relation to economic life of citizens. Now, this state is trying to reach out to most marginalized community and calling them labharthi, the household. The household are given some kind of a gas connection, Awas Yojana, and things like that. In our CSDS surveys, we find that we can certainly divide the labharthi phenomena into two categories when it comes to Muslim. Ration and Ujjwala are certainly reaching out to Muslim by the central government. But when it comes to Awas Yojana, which is bit more substantive in economic terms, we find some kind of a discrepancy, some kind of a difference between Muslims and the other communities. Now, if we go back to the economic life of people, because where we don't have Muslims, in our surveys are saying that we don't have employment, we are facing tremendous amount of poverty, and at the same time, there is a hostile environment around us. But at the same time, they would also say that certainly we got ration, we also got Ujjwala gas connection, etc. Now, it's a very complicated configuration. And in this sense, why, what do you think of the present state, which is actually trying to reach out to the most marginalized to legitimize the slogan, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas? The moment you say that Muslims are marginalized, they would say, see, that Ujjwala is reaching out to them. See, ration is also, they are going to get ration, etc. Now, this is a very interesting paradox. On the one hand, basic things, basic survival things are going to certainly reaching out to them. But on the other hand, the environment is hostile and nobody is bothered about talking about them. So this turn, this economic turn, especially in 2014, how do you look at it?
Hilal, let me put it this way. I don't count the reaching of rations to the community as important at all. Even the poorest of the poor are capable of finding food for themselves.
Mm.
That is one. The shall I say, the unfairness in the Awas Yojana is very apparent. And
True.
I'm glad that you mentioned it, that it says so in your survey. But I would say that it is a natural corollary to the government being partial or let me say, unfairly partial towards Muslims. That that is a given. I mean, we have had repeated statements from chief ministers of various states. To quote an example, if you look at us,
Mm.
the chief minister making absurd statements vis-a-vis Muslims almost on a weekly basis. He's taking on needlessly a first-class university on the borders of Assam.
Yes.
And yesterday I see that he took on and insulted a journalist who asked him a question just because that journalist's name was Shah Alam. So the question of partiality, unfortunately, very much exists. And where do you show partiality? You will show partiality in the distribution of loans. You will show partiality in the recruitment of people, and you will show partiality, of course, when you come to this Awas Yojana. That is a given, and it has increasingly happened, unfortunately, since 2014. I think the people of India are aware of this. It is not something that I'm saying that people are not aware. People are aware of the shall I say, the move of majoritarianism in the last 10 years. And that, unfortunately, is painful because it creates consternation in a community that, as you mentioned, are 25 or 24 crores. It's an absurd situation for a community of that large a number to feel constantly concerned and to be looking over their shoulder for anything, which is their right. The problem, I think, and we read all the time in newspapers, is the lack of focus in public mind towards the directive principles of our Constitution. The Constitution is abundantly clear that we have to be equal to all. We have borrowed hugely from the American Constitution, which talks of equality, liberty, and fraternity, and we borrowed those verbatim. We have forgotten in India the concept of fraternity. What does it mean? This is what the government is not focusing on. And as you see from the results today that have come out in this large general election, I think that the people of India are realizing that there is a limit to the pressure of majoritarianism.
Absolutely.
I have repeatedly said, Hilal, in my interviews earlier, and I believe it to the core of my heart, that 80% India is Hindu and a bulk of them are secular. The problem is that this deep divide has been created by what we called a fringe element that unfortunately gained power and today is not a fringe.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
they cannot influence the thinking of the right-minded Hindu and the Sikh and the Christian, everybody. We have lived together for centuries. Every year in this country, festivals are celebrated together. So if I live in a condominium, and if there is a Diwali, it is done here. If there is Eid, there are hundreds of people coming to my house on Eid. So the problem in the last 10 years is that there has been an attempt to create a fissure. And I think that the people of India has spoken very clearly that we will not accept this fissure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just to substantiate what you just said about living together separately attitude, in our survey as well as the Pew survey that was conducted in 2021-22, when this question asks India belongs to whom, more than 90% people in our surveys would say that India belongs to all. And when we categorically ask this question, do you think that India belongs only to Hindus? People would say no, absolutely not. The percentage is very few, means it's just 8 or 9%. So it means that whatever you are saying is important and substantive. Now, coming back to the statement of a chief minister, which we all know, Chief Minister of Assam, and if I link it to the electoral campaign led by BJP in 2024 general election, for the first time in history of post-colonial India, affirmative action given to a particular community was actually interpreted through the communal lens. For the first time, Muslim OBC question was highlighted as some kind of a commoner question. That has never happened. Communal questions were Babri Masjid, Ram Temple issue, Urdu, etc. These were always presented as a commoner question, but there was a consensus that affirmative action policies will always be seen through the prism of inclusion, etc. But for the first time, that has been broken. Now, the question is that there are two demands made by the Pasmanda groups. One, that scheduled caste category, Muslims and Christian, Dalit Muslim and Dalit Christian must be included in the scheduled caste category. Two, that the scope of the scope of affirmative action should be expanded so that some kind of an engagement with the private sector can also be established. I find that there is no discussion on these issues. How do you look at the question of affirmative action? Reservation is just one bit of it, but there is no discussion whenever we talk about Muslim marginalization. The private sector, which is actually providing lots of jobs, and there is no engagement with the private players. So how do you look at that?
Hilal, you put many things in this question. The first thing, let me say is, let's talk of affirmative action. Now, I believe that any sensitive democracy, affirmative action towards minorities and weaker sections is a given. It should be accepted, and it is very much enshrined in the Constitution of India. Unfortunately, and a lie spoken 1,000 times becomes the truth, that affirmative action in this country is being termed as appeasement. The term affirmative action now is abhorrent to this government. See, they have created new words, pseudo-secularism. So appeasement, this is nonsense, because to my mind, factually, I have seen no cases of appeasement at all. And I often ask that, please show me where appeasement has happened. You cannot statistically prove to me any appeasement in this country. Now coming back to affirmative action. Any sensitive government would agree to affirmative action to its weaker sections. And that is why we have had reservations for the Dalits and the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. It is affirmative action to a class that has been deprived of its rights, not from now, but for thousands of years. But your third question is reservations. The reservations for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes are not on economic basis. The reservation criteria is based on the fact that they were ill-treated, that they needed affirmative action, that there's thousands and thousands of years of injustice to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So for anybody to demand reservation on the caste of economic status is actually turning the cart completely upside down, because then the Pandora's box for a creamy layer of the scheduled caste will also open up, which is the big debate today.
Yeah, recently, yeah.
It's exactly the big debate that, you benefited from reservations. Now let this be and let somebody else come in. But that's something being politically resisted, and it's not for you and me to debate that. Up, you come to the Pasmanda Muslims. the government, the UPA government actually has decided that the section of Pasmandas would come under the OBC category. And they have been granted reservation. I don't know the exact statistics. I think it's 6% or 7% or something like that, that there is reservation for them. Unfortunately, within the Muslims now, and it has been, let me say, taken advantage of by political classes, that's let us awaken this concept of pasmandas and ashrafs and ajgars and so on. So you have within the Muslims in the last decade or decade and a half, this demand by pasmandas that we have been deprived, that we have been harshly treated, that we demand something else. It should be a debate within Muslims but it has gone out of hand, let me say. And the ruling dispensation is latching onto this, that here is a class, the Muslims won't vote for us. But if we become attractive enough to the Pasmandas, then a class of Muslims will vote for us. So it's actually become a political initiative by the ruling class to take this initiative and divide and create a cleavage in the Muslim community. That is the truth of it. If I was a leader of Pasmandas, I would not I would not give this argument that we are financially backward. The Muslims in India may not be competing with the Hindu middle classes, but the Muslims in India are no beggars. They have a lot of talent in their hands. You live in Delhi. If you repair your house today, your plumber, your carpenter, your electrician, anybody working in your house, your petty contractor is a Muslim. So what has transpired over the years is that because they did not get education and because they were not getting jobs, हाथ का काम करना सीखे हैं. And so they repair cycles, they repair motorcycles. Years ago, let me give you an example. There was a friend of mine in the Indian Police Service. He was a 1965 batch, very acclaimed police officer called Ayn Rashid Khan. So Rashid Saab made a film on Calcutta. And this film was made Jyoti Babu's time. So I would imagine this is about 1972, 73. The title of the film was Seventh Man. And the Seventh Man was highly acclaimed because I spoke in those days to Satyajit Ray, and Satyajit Ray himself said that it's a unique film. Now, what was that film? The film said that every seventh man in Calcutta is a Muslim. And the wheels of economy of Calcutta move because of him. Because he's the butcher, he's the baker, he's the rickshaw, he's the carpenter, he's the electrician. So the Muslims have come to occupy, despite what I have said, a very unique position in Indian society. What is indeed true is that they are unable to graduate from this to a different level. And that is the critical part of it for which we have to struggle. And I saw that struggle when I was in Jamia Millia Islamia. And I told that in a conference that was taken by the education minister at that time. Kapil Sibal was the minister, and he had a conference on Muslim education. I told him, आज का मुसलमान पेट काट के अपने बच्चे को पढ़ाने के लिए तैयार.
Agree.
We have to provide opportunities. We have to create 10 more Jamias. We have to create an AMU and not be like the Assam chief minister saying that Mehboob ul Haq's university in Arunachal should be shut down. That is not what we need. We don't need what this government has done to shut down the Maulana Azad scholarship. That was such a wonderful instrument to give scholarships to minority communities. You've shut it down. So on one hand, you say that you will have reservations for the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. On the other hand, you say that we remove scholarships, but we will give scholarships on an economic criteria. You are saying two different things for two different people. And that I find is a contradiction. And those things need to be corrected.
Yeah, just to, just a quick question with regard to what you just said. Uh, Basically, when I say Pasmanda groups, because they are making a very different sort of an argument. And there is a report, a study conducted by uh, Satish Deshpande about practice of untouchability among Muslim, etc. That was commissioned by Minorities Commission. And Sachar also recognizes that report. Now, the question is that because of 1950 presidential order, the category called scheduled caste was somehow restricted only to three religions. The caste belongs to three religions: Hindus, Sikh, and later Buddhist. Indian Muslims, the Dalit Muslims and Dalit Christian. I'm using this word Dalit Muslim and Dalit Christian because the report uses that, are not given reservation in this category. But initially, when the constitution was implemented, there was no religion bar in that. And you are absolutely right that the socio-economic backwardness as well as social backwardness in relation to was used as a criteria to identify scheduled caste. But this religion thing was something that is only applicable to scheduled caste category, not scheduled tribe, not OBC. Now, the question is that on the one hand, this government is saying that we would like to have pasmandas, etc. We would like to talk about pasmandas. But at the same time, when it comes to opening up or secularize the category called scheduled caste, they are completely silent. So therefore, they are actually, using this pasmanda card for political, their own political benefit. But I agree with you on that point. Now, the part of the answer which you gave me also indicated the possibility of some kind of a self-help uh, movement among Muslims or Muslim NGOs, Muslim organization, etc. Now, there is a very interesting recent study by Farah Naqvi of Muslim social sector or Muslim NGOs, where they find, which is very interesting, that the mainstream NGOs are a bit reluctant to establish functional relationship with Muslim charity organization, Muslim NGOs, and Muslim organizations in general, because you are involved in number of different initiatives. Do you find that true, or what sort of engagement you can see with the mainstream charities and non or the third sector organization with regard to Muslim marginalization? Because end of the day, community initiative are going to play a very important role in relation to getting rid of backwardness.
Hilal, it is what you're saying is inevitable. NGO or government, the matter is the same, that if there is an increasing divide in communities, then NGOs are also the same people. They are also inhabited by the same type of people who go in, some go in government, some go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There is no doubt there will be NGOs who are deeply secular, and I know them, who will go out of their way to help marginalized communities, not only Muslim, but also Christians. I mean, there are many Christians. I think Muslims at least have large numbers, but the Christians get really the wrong end of the stick because their numbers are even not there. They can't even protest. आप तो जाके protest कर सकते हैं, Christians तो कर भी नहीं सकते. I know what is happening to Christians in states like Madhya Pradesh and etc. So the point that I'm trying to say is that if Farah says that there is a bias amongst some NGOs towards Muslims, then obviously there is a bias. It should be a given. At the same time, let's not deny that there will be many NGOs that function without a bias. That is the reality of India. That is nothing new. But I want to say something controversial here. You spoke about pasmandas and reservations, etc. You know, let me stick my neck out. Islam, as we know it, does not believe in a caste system. So to me, the words become abhorrent when within Islam, we are looking at categories. All Muslims are Muslims. The Muslim that is out there who goes for his prayers as La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, that is a Muslim. Now, we are creating these castes and substructures, and people will take advantage of this. I would beseech Pasmanda leaders that, look, whatever difficulties you have faced is not because of the caste system. The difficulties you have faced is because of the economic reality that you have in front of you, that your parents who left and went for Pakistan left you with nothing here. And you are left to struggle. So the way out is not to ask for jobs not to ask for reservations. The way out is to educate yourself. The way out is to build your schools. The way out is to build your colleges. The way out is to send your girls. Let them come out of Parda and demand jobs. We have seen the confidence of girls in India coming out during the CAA movement. The CAA movement was led by Muslim girls in India. The men folk were told कि आप tent लगाइए, बत्ती लगाइए, पंखा ठीक कर दीजिए. But the movement was led by women. We have to encourage our young girls to come out of this Parda system and come out in the mainstream. We have to build schools and colleges. We need many more Sayyid Ahmad Khans. That is the need of the hour, rather than besmirching your own reputation and asking for reservations.
Yeah. Razi bhai, so how much time we have? Because I have a few more questions, and there is a message that people also can ask, because obviously we would like to have a more conversation with Najeeb sir.
Yeah.
So how much time we have?
Yeah. So let me clarify. First, you will go up to another 20 minutes.
Great.
If you can survive together. And thereafter, the usual question and answer session will be there.
Sure.
And you will have to survive another 20 minutes.
Oh, you have plenty of energy. I'm sure you can survive very well. So
No, we can survive.
I can see the faces both. You love it. Really, this conversation is going very well. So after you are finished, done, not finished, done at around 12, then we will have the question and answer session, which is our usual way. The audience will ask questions. Few questions may be lasting 20 minutes. Okay. So you have 20 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Now, the first segment is over. Move to the second segment, but you have already answered some of the questions which I was going to ask you at the end. But there is something which is important in terms of the way in which Muslim culture is represented in last 10 years. The Muslim contribution, in my view, has been relegated to margin. The moment you say this is Muslim, there is an impression which is created among the very honest people, that they think that something has gone wrong with us in past, and we need to actually rectify that and think of a new imagination of India. So how do you think that Muslim contribution in modern India as well historically, what could be the mode of what could be the role of Muslim intellectual classes to raise that question again, to bring a positive representation of Muslim cultures and contribution?
Two things, Hilal. A, there is no denying the enormity of Muslim contribution to India post 1000 AD, in terms of architecture, in terms of literature, in terms of poetry, dress, food, language. There's a huge contribution. And nobody can deny it. At the same time, there has been also, shall I say, a fight back. Because at the same time, we cannot deny the enormity of the great, enormous Hindu culture that existed in the country, particularly if you go to the south. The great empires, Vijayanagar and the Rashtrakutas, the huge temples, the beautiful temples, their dresses, their languages, the dances, the music, the costumes. So a comparison of cultures is always unfair. Having said that, the current dispensation would like to push back the Muslim culture and show that the Hindu culture was the greatest. Now, be that as it may, everybody knows the truth. Every culture has its positives, every culture has its negatives. Today, as we stand, the position of Muslims, unfortunately, is such that their contribution today positively towards culture is very marginal. The Urdu language, barring the great contribution done by, say, somebody like Sanjeev Saraf, who brings out the Rekhta.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
There, who is there? Now, till, let me say, till even the 70s or 80s, we had the great poets. So if let's not count Faisa, but you had Kaifi, you had Sahir, you had Shakil, you had Majroo, you had Josh, you know, you had Majaz, everybody who could speak a unique language that was attractive. And that is why you had a film like Mughal-e-Azam, where the language was not understandable, but is the biggest hit today. It is
Yes,
still
yes.
today, maybe greater than Sholay also, the biggest hit today in terms of people who saw it. And for 2 weeks and 3 weeks outside Maratha Mandir, people lining up to buy tickets, or ₹2.5 ka ticket, ₹250 ka bik raha hai. You know, it was the magic of your culture, the magic of the culture that came alive in Chaudhry Ka Chand, the magic of your culture that came alive in Mere Mehboob. Nobody can deny it. But who today can bring that? So the
Yes.
problem, as Shakespeare would have said, that problem, dear Caesar, lies within ourselves that we are underling. It stems from our lack of education. It stems again from where I started, a lack of leadership. That who is to lead this community into, you see, culture will come when you have money. Culture comes when you have a belly full. If the Mughals brought out these great monuments, it was their belly was full, their treasury was full.
True.
Or these great poets who came in the 50s and 60s, kam se kam rozi roti chalti thi, thanks to Bollywood. Today, you have no one speaking the language. The Urdu departments in the university are struggling. Who's struggling? Who's reading Urdu? And who's bringing it out? So, हमें देखना है that let the community now get its muscle together, realize that it needs to do something for the future generations. It has to educate its young. And these are the people that will come. It will not come by just wearing Kali Sherwani and Churidar pajama and saying that I'm a Muslim with great culture. It will not happen. It has to happen with modern education. It will happen only with the modernization of the madrasa system.
Yeah.
If you go to the madrasa, now they have started modernizing. What is the point of wearing only a dupalli topi and a kurta pajama and reading only the Holy Quran? You have to read physics, you have to read mathematics, you have to read English, and to be able to compete. I have often believed, Hilal, that the Muslims who wanted partition of India were those who were unable to compete with their Hindu neighbor.
Absolutely.
And that stemmed from lack of education. And that is exactly that is happening today, that you want to blame your Hindu neighbor. But look within yourself. Where are you standing? And the guys who got educated, my children, your children, etc., they prefer to go abroad and settle abroad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're leaving the dregs behind. So to answer your question, to revive your culture, get back to your roots, educate yourself. Once you educate yourself, then your poetry will flourish, then your music will flourish, then your culture will flourish.
Yeah. Yeah. On a lighter note, it reminds me an interview with Amit Shah gave in 2014 when it is asked that, what is Modi's opinion on Mughals? And he said, look, he wears chudidar pajama.
He what?
He wears chudidar pajama. So, we have reduced the contribution of Muslim to that, and I completely agree with you on that. Now, this is the last segment because you have already answered many of the questions in your previous remarks. And you also said with what I wanted to, I'll come back to the social reform question later, but you have already indicated towards that. But the question is that, and you have been quite vocal about it, about the Hindu-Muslim dialogue, which is actually an important issue at the moment. But there has been a debate on appropriate mode to do it. So what is your take on that?
I will tell you, I have been in dialogue with the highest echelons of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS, since 2019. I believe that dialogue is the only way that you can improve relations between communities. If there is the misunderstanding between communities go back to 300, 400 years. The misunderstandings existed even in the time of Akbar.
Yes.
The misunderstandings existed in the time of Dara Shikoh. Dara Shikoh lost his life at the altar of Puritan Muslims because they declared him a heretic. The differences have existed in the time of Aurangzeb. They existed in the times of the British. Perhaps the only small window that we had was the 1857 mutiny. That's clearly a very secular movement. But even in our national movement, the question mark was always existing. Even when Gandhiji said he'll go for the Khilafat, there were voices against him. So now, I really believe that to remove these differences over centuries, we must dialogue with the non-Muslims. The non-Muslims have 2 or 3 major grievances vis-a-vis Muslims. I'll come to Muslims have grievances, of course, and you know them. The non-Muslims feel you call them kafir. Kafir is a derogatory term. And it's for you and I to clarify who is a kafir. Yeah, I believe that kafir is a non-believer, and I don't think that a Hindu is a non-believer. He has more gods than you and I have. So he is not a non-believer. And to my mind, if we look at the concept of Wahdatul Wujud, which is Allah is everywhere, Allah is in you, Allah is here, Allah is there, then that is exactly what Hinduism is saying. And so the concept of Atman, the great Atman. So we have to speak of this to the Hindu community. The sensitivity towards the cow, it has existed for centuries. But you will still have silly Muslims in some places slaughtering a cow. Why can't we have that sensitivity to understand that this is an animal that is worshipped in India as a mother? Those are sensitivities which we must cultivate. And they must cultivate these sensitivities that Muslims are not unclean, that Muslims are part of us, that these are not people who came 1,000 years over the sword. They must understand the power of the Sufi movement. They must understand the power of the Bhakti movement. They must understand what Bulle Shah said, what Data Ganj Baksh said, what Baba Farid has said. It is this message that will come through dialogue. So I, for one, to answer your question, I'm a firm believer. I have had repeated dialogues with the highest echelons in the Sangh. Today on your channel, I can say categorically that in the highest echelons of the Sangh, there are efforts to dilute this dislike. I have met members of the Sangh who to speak in Hindi, sabhya log hain. I can see that they are extremely decent people. And we have to, you come to Delhi, I will take you to meet Mr. Ram Bahadur Rai, who was the chairman of the Indira Gandhi Center for Cultural Arts. He started his career as a journalist. He was in the Sangh. You meet him and you come out feeling a warmth. There are people there who are willing to understand our perspective. And I'm sure that there are, and the Muslims that I am meeting, because I'm continuing the dialogue with Muslims also, that there are hundreds of Muslims I'm meeting who wish this dialogue to succeed. Having said that, and let this the time of disclosure, that there are many, many Muslims and non-Muslims who believe that I'm wasting my time, that this will not work. Well, be that as it may, the effort must go on.
Thank you. This is actually very courageous because you did not shy away of, explaining your position and something. But yeah, that's great because usually people would say no, and this is not a diplomatic answer. This is a straightforward answer, and I appreciate it. And I'm not going to ask you what is the outcome of that because we all know that these are actually processes, and the outcome of the processes are not going to happen in 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 years. Now coming back to, and I'm not going to ask you the relationship or the impact of RSS has on BJP, etc., because things have not changed. We all know that lynching has not stopped and things like that. But obviously, some kind of a channel in my personal capacity as an intellectual, I think there is a need to have some kind of a dialogue with all sort of stakeholders. So I agree with you, with at the same time, without ignoring the fact that things have not changed at all. Now, coming back to 2024 results, we know that...
No, things have got worse.
Yes, yes. Now, 2024 result, obviously, it was a win-win situation for everyone. But after a few months, we realized that, BJP's reliability on radical Hindutva has not gone. In fact, they have started raising the controversial and more provocative issues in a language which was not yet so much radical. So they are basically moving into a direction where they have realized that if they have to survive this coalition government, they have to rely entirely on the question on their position on Hindutva. That has not yet changed. Now, on the other hand, what has happened is that the opposition is not like 2019 opposition. The
Sorry, I
strong
didn't get that.
opposition. This is a new opposition which is stronger than 2019. But we also find that opposition is almost like behaving as if they are in 2019. There is complete silence from them. They are hesitant to raise the M word, as if that the moment they would say Muslim, Hindu would get alienated. I don't think that's that. Now, in this scenario, what do you think that what should be the attitude of Muslim intelligentsia and obviously those Muslims who have been involved in activism of some kind?
First, the role of the politician, albeit any political party which is the ruling party or the opposition, there is a term in Hindi which you will know. It's called Kamdhenu, the milch cow. The Muslims today are the milch cow. Come to the vote, the opposition runs to them. They have no alternative. Ye jayenge kahan? I'm afraid that is the attitude of the opposition. And that stems from the fact that they believe that there is a counter reaction if they say anything on affirmative action. I come back again to that. So there is a fear. After all, why does a political party fight an election? Fight an election to win an election.
Absolutely.
Come in government. So the BJP feels that to raise the communal bogey will get them votes. Polarization is the name of the game. The opposition feels that we can play it both ways. थोड़ा सा मुसलमानों को खुश कर दो, थोड़ा सा हिंदुओं को खुश कर दो, we gain something. That is the game that is being played in India. I believe it must be played all over the world by politicians. We feel it a little more because here we are feeling the pinch a little more. Now, the role of Muslim intellectuals, I'm afraid, they have let down the Indian Muslims very badly. Where are the intellectuals? I put that question to you. I mean, you have maybe some teachers in the Jawaharlal University, you have some in Jamia and in AMU, etc. But where is the intellectual class in India today amongst Muslims?
True. Yeah.
The secular writing also comes only from Hindus. Today, the champions of Muslims in India are Hindus. I belonged, my former service we formed a group, and you've heard about it. It's called the Constitutional Conduct Group,
Yeah.
where we want to uphold the values of the Constitution. We are constantly writing to government when we feel that the Constitution is being violated. Now, we are about 200 odd. Of the 200 odd, we are only 4 or 5 Muslims. And of the 190 that are remaining, they are far more pro-Muslim than I can ever be. Because they understand the problems of Muslims. They understand the sensitivity with which they have to deal with minorities. They understand the concept of affirmative action as how it is to play out and what is enunciated in the directive principles of the Indian Constitution. So the role of intellectuals both ways. I'm afraid I don't think that you should rely very much on Muslim intellectuals. We should rely more on the secular polity of it.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, because I think we can go on and on, and because 9:30 is the time which was given to us. So I stop here, Razibhai, and I think over to you. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. It was really enlightening.
Thank you, Hilal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really, it was a wonderful conversation. And before we go to question and answer session, here is the announcement for coming Saturday. It's a session going to be on Sahil with Yanvi by Gauhar Raza and Atal Faruqi, 2 well-known figures in the Delhi area on Sahil or Urdu literature. And the performer will be Saima Rahman. These days, everybody knows her, rendering the Urdu poetry on the YouTubes and everywhere. So over to Dr. Rafat Hussain for moderating the question and answer session. Rafat.
Thank you, Razibhai. And thank you both the speaker, Honorable Lieutenant Governor Najeeb Jung Sahab and Dr. Hilal Ahmed for a wonderful discussion. And I like the format for discussion. So the question and answer session is open now. And there are 2 options. You can raise your digital hand or put your comment or question in the chat box, and I will monitor both of them. So let's see, the first question is from Fawzam, and this question is for Jung Saab. All the educated people ran away to Pakistan. That is what we know.
I'm not able to understand, sir. Can you be a little more clearer?
Sure. So the first question is from Fawzam, and this is to Mr. Jung. All the educated people ran away to Pakistan. That is what we know. Muslims are finding difficulty in survival in mixed neighborhoods. You are talking of culture and whatnot. So I don't see a question there, but do you want to address?
No, I think the gentleman has answered his own question. That, of course, to say that all intellectuals ran away to Pakistan is very inaccurate. I mean, people went, but a lot of people remained behind, and those people have remained very, very loyal to India. They've had the fruits of being here. Both Hilal and I are sitting in front of you, whose parents have stayed back, and we have faced no differentiations. We are very much happy and citizens of India. So I don't think that there is much basis in saying that living in a mixed neighborhood. I live in a condominium, which has I think about 80 odd homes, and I'm the only Muslim, and I have never felt a bias against me at all. So a lot of us live very, very happily in this country.
Thank you. So most of them are the comments, and
Rafat, there are 6-7 people who have raised their hand.
Yeah, I'm going back there first. Let me see. Thank you. Thank you for. Okay, so now let's go to the raised hand. And first person is Hassan. Hassan Saab, please unmute yourself. Najeeb Saab, you spoke about the dialogue you had with the RSS. My question to you is that how can this be expanded to provide a platform for a multi-stakeholder dialogue, a national dialogue that is not just between some Muslims and the RSS, but a vigorous dialogue that is with all sections of society, political, economic, social, and so create a more multidimensional model rather than the one very limited initiative that you have started off with.
No, you've raised a very, very valid point, sir. And we have expanded already. We are having a lot of meetings with in smaller groups. We have not made a very large group. ऐसा नहीं है कि 500 लोगों से बात की हो, but we meet in much smaller groups of intellectuals and people who are right thinking. And we have been doing that for past 3-4 years. We have not publicized it because I think there was no point in publicizing at this stage. But we will be expanding it and going to city by city in India. We've already held dialogues in Hyderabad, in Lucknow, several in Delhi. So what you are saying exactly is the modus operandi that we'll be following, sir.
It'd be helpful if you have a strategy document that actually lists out the various initiatives that you plan, along with milestones and timelines.
Milestone is, sir, possible nahi hai, because there are too many variables involved, so we cannot fix timelines and milestones. But yes, strategy paper we have discussed. We put nothing in writing, but we have had so much of dialogue that it's all internalized now within us. We know exactly where we are going and how we would do it.
When you write it, it concentrates the mind. So that is always a good idea to write down whatever you're thinking. Okay, thank you. The next question is from Fabia. सर, उर्दू लैंग्वेज का मार्जिनलाइजेशन शुरू से चला आ रहा है, इसको कैसे सही किया जाएगा ग्राउंड लेवल पर?
अब ये एक बैड लक रही है उर्दू की कि सन 47 के बाद से एक इम्प्रेशन हो गया कि साहब ये तो मुसलमानों की जबान है और उसको रेक्टिफाई करने की
इंग्लिश में कहें इसलिए कि all south there are many.
Yeah, but she asked an input.
There are many Southerns sitting here. At least the response should be in English so that they can understand what was the question.
Well, the question was to me was in Urdu, so I spoke in Urdu.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. You know, there are many others.
So, what I'm trying to say is that there's been a very bad patch since 1947. The impression went around that this was a language of Muslims. And because partition had taken place and there was shall I say, a backlash on Muslims for a period, Urdu also felt the backlash. Urdu, frankly speaking, Urdu survived thanks to the great poets we had writing dialogues and poetry in Hindi films. But like I said, very few families now encourage their people to read Urdu, and that includes Muslims, sir. Everybody prefers Hindi and English, and if you're in the States, then their vernacular language. So it's just not the government to blame. The community itself is not doing it. But there is a gentleman, which I mentioned in my talk, Mr. Sanjeev Saraf, who started an enormous initiative called Rekhta. And let me tell you that when Rekhta had its first function in 2011 or 12, it was in the India International Center. People attending were less than 200. And last year, the annual Jasn-e-Rekhta festival was held in the National Stadium in Delhi with 4 lakh footfalls. And these were young boys and girls. These were boys and girls from the ages of 18 to 30, 35, who perhaps don't understand the nuances and the intricacies of Urdu, but enjoy the language and wish to learn the language, at least to be able to improve their vocabulary, to enjoy the Sher-o-Shari a bit more. So we are seeing a revival I will not say revival, but I will say a growing interest in the last decade. And if this continues, then for sure, next 10 years will be much better.
Thank you, Mr. Jung. Next one is Abu Tariq.
This is Abu Tariq from Jamia Millia Islamia. So my question is related to Pasmanda Muslims. I did my PhD on that. So there is a growing disenchantment among Pasmanda Muslims. If you see there is also the internal disparity among Pasmanda Muslims. If you see the Ansaris are the more getting the fruits of the reservation and all that. So there is a more assertion of among Pasmanda Muslims. So how you perceive that, and there is a the caste, like if you see the upper caste, they did not more vocal about their caste, but the Pasmanda nowadays, and still they are the sufferers in these regimes because they are the occupational caste. If you see the lynchings, most of the lynchings happens to the Pasmanda Muslims. And you also talk about the neighboring the neighboring Hindus and Muslims cultural intermingling. But if you ask, if you see that with the more people, like if you see the upper caste people mostly interact conveniently to the Hindus than the Pasmanda Muslims, because they are the more sufferers. How do you perceive that?
This word suffering is something which is beyond me. I mean, there's a class of
Because
people having a bad time. There's a class of people who are economically backward. And the reasons for economic backwardness are obvious. Like I said, it's education. It's because that these people didn't have enough opportunities at a certain point of time that they have stayed there. To make it into a caste fight between Muslims will be to the disadvantage of Muslims. This battle, if it has to be fought unitedly. The Pasmandas must understand, as the so-called backwards must understand, that Islam does not believe in a caste system, for heaven's sake. Why don't you say that? Rather than repeating that the Ansaris are backward and Hilal is forward. That's not so. Now, you are backward for certain reasons, and those reasons are sociological. We have to combat them. We will not combat them by fighting amongst ourselves. We will combat them by educating us. Like I said, aapne kaha ke they are artisans. They are artisans who should eventually develop into businessmen. And for that, they must educate their young. They must build into businesses. But if a badai insists only on his son being a badai, then he will stay a badai. But if the badai starts a carpentry shop, then they grow. So I would say, sir, that we should not encourage, at least in forums like this, conversations that so-and-so is backward and so is forward amongst Muslims. Let's say that we believe in a casteless society. We want to bring forward the people who are economically challenged. We want to bring forward our women. Why do we talk of Pasmandas? Why don't you talk of young girls? Those are it's 50% of our community that needs to go up. That is the handholding that is required in this community. So I will beg you.
But sir, there is a feeling among Pasmanda Muslim, because I have worked among.
I know, I appreciate that, sir. I am saying that have worked there, you should go and tell them that bhai Islam mein caste system nahi hai. You are going against the tenets of Islam. Please. Fundamentally, this is not Manusmriti. Islam doesn't believe in Manusmriti. That is the whole life of the Prophet. But if we go into this Pasmanda, Ashraf, Ajgar business, then we will create a divide and fall into the classical trap that the government is laying for you. That is exactly the trap that is being laid for you. And you're falling in that trap. तो आप जो रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, आप तो जाके उनको ये बताइए कि भाई come out of this trap, yeah.
But sir, if you see the Muslim ulama, like the concept of kufu, kafir, that also, if you talk about some educated people among pasmanda, they are the more assertive, that they feel that they are lacking because of that education. If you see the educational institutions of Muslims, there is a little education institution, but still they hold like the in these days the waqf, like waqf issues. So they say that there's only the upper caste Muslims, on forward Muslims on the waqf
I
properties,
have
and they
no
are
answer.
selling.
I have no answer to your question, sir. Frankly, I have no answer. I
Thank
think
you.
it's up to you guys to go out there and say that we want to improve you, that you have to educate yourselves, and that is it. Otherwise, you are falling into a classical trap.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on. And the next person is Imtiaz Saab.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Najeeb Jung Sahab and Hilal Ahmed Sahab, for your enlightening and insightful discussion. Unfortunately, social division and marginalization and blatant injustice are driven by and sustained by a political agenda. We have to find some creative ways to work around them. My question is, do the Muslims in India realize that in addition to education, character empowers? Character is destiny. By character, I mean honesty, integrity, trustworthiness, tolerance, humility, civic responsibility, community unity, mutual trust and respect, etc. I have a strong feeling that as a community, we lack these values. I would like your comment on this, please.
You have answered the question, sir. You develop these and you will progress.
Say it again.
सवाल में ही जवाब पोशीदा है. You need
नहीं,
it all. You need it,
ये
obviously.
कैसे होगा साहब? ये कैसे इनकलकेट होगा? ये सवाल है.
Najeeb, I am not a messiah to give you solutions. You have said that these are critical things. I entirely agree with you.
Yeah, we are trying to work on these things, and maybe my friend Mr. Rajaullah Qureshi will say something about it.
Okay, thank you so much. And the next person is Ishrat Aziz Saab. Ishrat Bhai, please.
Yes, I am. I have
Okay,
Ishrat bhai, we
go
can only see your
switched
head.
on the phone, switched on the microphone. Yes.
Ishrat
Let
bhai,
me see.
you're showing only
I
your
can
head.
see
Please
that.
show your face. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Anyway, I agree with almost everything. Don't want to say I agree with everything, because there is no such thing as agreeing with everything. But I do agree with almost everything of what Najeeb Jung has said. And I have enjoyed this particular talk and many of his other videos, because he speaks out his mind. And it is time we spoke out our mind. I find that I have written out 2 pages of notes, and I'm not going to read out from them or cover all the points. But I would just say, and this is in consonance with what Najeeb Jung said, and it is this: our present is because of our past, our acts of commission and omission in the past. As for the future, it is in our hand. For this, we should talk less of what others can do for us and more on what we can do for ourselves. Having made that general statement, I just want to say that, yes, about the Pasmanda, I never heard of something called Pasmanda, but it's obviously a new development. I always believed that in Islam, there is no kind of caste distinction. Now, I'm not going to oppose Pasmanda concept on theological basis. Of course, it is theologically, it is completely wrong to talk of pasmanda, but I'm talking of practical reason. We should solve our problems without dividing the community. We should stop all talk of pasmanda Muslim, because to seek a solution for a group of Muslims on the pasmanda basis will, believe me, cause more problems than what it will solve. So this pasmanda, I'm not opposed to pasmanda on theoretical basis, on conceptual basis, on theological basis. I am opposed to it on practical basis. And then let me try to put a question. We should have technical education. Technical education is good for jobs. But liberal education is essential for leadership. For leadership quality, you need liberal education. And now here is the problem. Everywhere that I have noticed this problem, freedom of thought is essential for humanities. You don't need freedom of thought in technical education, but for liberal education, you do need freedom of thought. And that's the problem everywhere, because freedom of thought in humanities comes in conflict with religion or faith. So my question is to Najeeb, what are your views about, because we hear education, 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 but when you raise the question, what kind of education, there are differences and question. There is no difference about technical education, becoming doctor or engineer, but there are differences when you talk of intellectual thought. So yes, I have concluded my question.
Ishad Bhai,
Yes.
the fact is that liberal education has taken a beating in the last 10 years or so. There are efforts to change what is actually history into something which is contrived to serve purposes of a political class, and therefore all over when we genuinely see the top class universities like the Jawaharlal Nehru University, even Jamia, AMU, Jadavpur, they are really taking a beating because it becomes an initiative when you post vice chancellors who are committed on an ideology. And when you have committed vice chancellors, then education will suffer. So the point which I think we all need to make and emphasize, and of course it's a futile argument because this government will not listen, but the argument we must make is that for liberal education, the classical concept of liberal education, you have to look left and go back to the basics of getting genuine teachers to be professors in these liberal arts. Now that's not happening, and that's a pity, but you and I have no solutions for that.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
when we are talking about the JNU, so one
Sir,
question.
ये 2 घंटे हो रहे हैं, ये 1.5 घंटा हो गया, कब तक चलाएंगे?
Razi bhai,
Because
there are plenty of questions and comments.
It has to come from you as well as from moderator both. Questions should be limited to just questions, not a whole statements. And your response should be very brief so that you can really get away with that.
Yeah, give us.
Brief.
Thank you.
But I think that you have already exceeded 5 or 6 questioners.
Yeah, Najeeb Saab, thank you so much for your patience.
I'm ready to face the consequences. Tell me what should I do?
माफ कीजिएगा, मेरा हाथ बहुत पहले से रेज किया हुआ है। somehow हमारे रफत भाई देख नहीं पा रहे थे।
नहीं देख रहा हूँ, but I am alternating between.
Okay. Rafat,
मैंने written question भी बहुत पहले भेज दिया था।
I am alternating. Okay, please go ahead.
Najeeb, please request
I
our
already wrote the
post.
question.
Please bear with us.
Question
It's very interesting. We want to finish all questions. Please.
How you respond to some Muslims' criticism of your meeting with RSS leaders like Mr. Mohan Bhagwat? And And a related question is, I feel that was a great initiative. Are you continuing that effort and is there any
I
progress?
can't understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
sir. Can you repeat, please?
Identify
My
yourself.
question is written there. You can read it. I will say again. How
Please.
do you respond to some Muslims' criticism of your meeting with RSS leaders like Mr. Mohan Bhagwat? And a
I ignore
related,
that. I ignore
question,
that
I
criticism, sir.
feel that was a great initiative. Are you continuing that effort and is there any progress?
I ignore that criticism.
Your question was already entertained.
Any
So
initiative is bound to be criticized by people who do nothing. So I have no respect for them. They can keep criticizing. My effort will go on irrespective of that.
So
okay, move to other questions. Move to other questions. Let's finish it. Yeah, quickly.
Thank you. Thank
so
you. Sir.
then Rajaullah Saab, please be brief and be pointed.
He already said, he already raised the question, it is finished.
Okay.
I already
Go
did.
to next.
Okay, so next one is Samlu, and she is asking, Mr. Jung, are you willing to accept the leadership of Muslim? If not, why?
Who am I to accept or not accept leadership, sir? My apologies. I am a retired civil servant. I love my golf. I'm leading a very good life. And so let me be rather than being a leader.
Thank you. Another question is from Shabana Begum, that she is saying that it's in reference to JNU that Umar Khalid and Sharjeel are in the jail while Kanaya from the JNU is out. What has to be done for them? It adds fear among who are vocal.
No, of course, it's very unjust for Umar or for Sharjeel to be in jail. We all know that. Unfortunately, we are unable to understand why they have not been bailed out. So that's all I can say. I mean, this is unfortunately a very unjust system at the moment.
Thank you.
So can you please come to an end of this? Because
yeah, it's almost done, and I will certainly miss few people, but let's invite the last person, Sayyid Amir.
Thank you, and I will make it very brief. And thank you both of you for staying this late and entertaining so many questions. The question which comes to my mind is both, and especially Professor Jung, have advanced so many rational thoughts and ideas and arguments. How do you accept these to make any difference on the eyes or ears of those people who are really not listening to any rationality? So all your elegant arguments and thoughts, they don't have a receptor. I mean, they don't have people who will receive. So it is a pity that they are going to make not much difference. The final one question I'm making it, as I understand, is it possible that the Muslim community in India, and I've been away for a long time, they seem to have retreated, especially the women, into more conservative attitude, something which Sayyid Ahmad Khan cautioned us against, which more than a century and a half ago. Thank you.
Sir, about the impact we will make, we are woodpeckers. We'll keep picking at the wood, hoping that some impact will come at some point of time.
Okay.
We've done, if there has been an impact, the government has lost considerably in this last election, and we hope to make a political change sooner than later. That's number one. About the women, I can't say. I've seen two sides of it. I've seen women who are conservative, but I've also seen the women who have led the CAA agitation. So really, I have great hopes in women. I have less hopes in men who want to keep them back. It's the men that we have to talk to and make them understand that this is 50% of our population. They have the same thinking process. They follow the same religion. They follow the same Quran. The only difference is they deserve equality. They must get equality. So it's up to us now to talk to our menfolk rather than the women. The women are all ready to come out.
Thank you so much, and let me once again thank you, Jung Saab and Hilal Saab, and I sincerely apologize for the people who I could not entertain the questions, although there was a long list.
Actually, there are some women there in the
Yeah, I
list.
know there are a lot of.
So this, yeah.
Well, you have to convince Halal Najeeb Saab whether he is.
No,
no.
Too
late.
I'm
No.
happy to listen.
No,
I'm
no,
happy to listen to a lady. I'm happy to listen to a lady, sir.
Okay, good. So
Which one? Which question?
pick up all the ladies, okay? So go for the ladies.
Okay, which is Aisha. I have a question to ask. Okay, go ahead, Aisha.
It's me, Alicia, sir.
Alicia, I am sorry.
Primarily,
my apology.
It is one of the most relevant and engaging.
Alicia, I can't understand what you're saying. Can you be closer to the mic and speak clearly, please?
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, better.
Go ahead.
Okay. So primarily, it was one of the most relevant and engaging discourse I have ever witnessed. Secondly, as I'm working, I'm working on Muslim women. I'm doing PhD from Delhi University and simultaneously teaching in Miranda House. So the question which I came across about Muslim women is that we barely talk about land rights in women, because majority of the immovable property we can talk about is land in India, the arable and non-arable land. So this one question which I would like to ask, that did you come across about this discourse of land rights for Muslim women? And secondly, indeed, sir,
What rights?
Land rights, inheritance rights for women, for Muslim women specifically.
Inheritance rights?
Land
Yes,
right. Right for land.
Yeah, okay.
And secondly, sir, yes, I agree that the Quran talks about the egalitarian society and there is no need to separate out Pasmanda Muslims. However, what is the tool we can use to talk about the atrocities they are going through in education? Because we have seen the entire the placement system, which I was a part of. So there were Muslims which have been discarded their jobs because their name were of a Muslim origin. Either like we have faced it. It's been a 2-year journey which we have faced. So what is the other thing which we can look forward for Pasmanda Muslims? If yes, there is no need to
I'm unable to understand the intricacies of your question. What I do understand is about the land rights, which I am no one to comment on. The land rights are based on what is engendered in the Holy Quran. Now, unless there is a discussion on Muslim jurisprudence and all the ulama come in and there's an interpretation, then that should change. Obviously, it should change. But for me to say anything is incorrect. The other part of the question I did not understand.
Okay, so that
is all right. Thank you so much once again, Jung Saab, and my sincere apologies to those whose question could not be entertained, and of course it raised a lot of questions.
There is one woman left you wanted to have selectively to take their questions, right?
No, I'm not taking any more questions for either woman because I don't want to annoy Jung Saab. Thank you. And thank you so much. I know it is kind of late, and those who wanted to discuss further, they can stay online and keep talking about it. And thank you so much again, Jung Saab.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. My video somehow stopped. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hilal. Thank you, Jung Saab. And maybe we are still thirsty. We didn't satisfy fully, so maybe we will recall you back. We will again. So he's gone.